Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so I know it's been a long time since I've made a video. I apologize. I have been super busy. I've been super busy. I had to do 3 appeals at the same time, and I have other jobs that I do, and I also work as a legal translator, and I have just been insanely busy. Okay, but I did want to catch up just to talk about a couple things. Let's see. Number one, I want to catch up on Sarah Boone. Okay, Sarah Boone is finally starting to get on track to what I thought she should have been a long time ago. Okay, and I'll try to explain that. The other thing I want to talk about is don't always look for true crime on this channel. Okay, this is just an amateur channel. I'm not a professional. I make videos about whatever I'm actually interested in. Okay, so people that don't like me talking about political stuff or non-true crime stuff, just look at the titles of my videos. When I make a title to a video, it'll be obvious when it's true crime. Okay. So if it doesn't look like true crime, just don't open it. I don't care. I make these for my personal interest. Okay. This is like a hobby for me. I don't care how many views I have. Okay. So if you guys see a video about Kamala Harris or about Donald Trump, just skip it if you're not interested. Okay. But now let's get into some true crime. Okay. So now Sarah Boone has finally retained counsel, and I think this is going to be a game changer. Okay. Look, I've been working in the law for more than 20 years. Okay. I used to be an attorney. Okay. I found that for my circumstances, I was kind of a nerd. I was a mathematics major and a philosophy major in college. So I found that I didn't do very good on the telephone, talking to other lawyers and being a tough guy lawyer, or talking in court. I always found that I was better just researching and writing and just doing the analysis. Okay. So I found that it was better for me to get into like writing appeals and motions and doing legal research and legal strategy consulting. And so over time, I just gave up my license. I had some personal issues about 15 years ago, and I just decided it was more convenient for me just to let go of the pressure of the license and just to work kind of like freelance. So I just basically, I work a lot. I mean, I do a lot of consulting and legal research in criminal law and also in civil law. But the reason I'm interested in talking about Sarah Boone is that I do a lot of my work in Florida, or at least in the federal courts of Florida. So I'm pretty familiar with how Florida works. And I do have kind of a fair understanding of a problem that I think plagues sort of the defense bar across the country in the US. Okay. And this problem is, I don't think we have a good triage program, okay, for determining when, let's say, indigent clients. Okay, this is for indigent clients, right? Most indigent clients just go to run of the mill public defenders, right? Okay, but when they conflict out of the public defender system, or when they have, like, say, a personal problem with their public defender or whatever, then they have a roster for appointed counsel. Okay. Now, the way it works in most states is that basically the people that are on the roster for appointed counsel are generally, I'm sorry, kind of mediocre lawyers. Okay. They're generally not very good lawyers because it doesn't pay very well. And there's just no benefit for somebody who wants to be successful or is in the habit of making more money to get on that roster, because it's not very rewarding. So it tends to attract kind of mediocre, kind of depressing lawyers who just aren't very good. And so it's really good. It's a really good system for people who have kind of low complexity, sort of simple cases, right? Okay. But the problem I see in the United States is that we do have a more expert roster. There's a more expert roster for, like, say, death penalty cases, right? But then when you go from death penalty to the rest of the defense, the kind of defendants that are out there, basically it just goes from like expert to terrible. Okay. And I personally think that they ought to expand the category of death qualified counsel to include death and complex case qualified counsel. Okay. Because a case can get complex, not just because it's a hardcore exposure. Like, for example, Sarah Boone at most is facing second-degree murder or maybe some kind of voluntary manslaughter. Basically something like that. I would also add maybe like torture and kidnapping or something, but basically it's something like second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter, whatever. Okay. Now on paper, that's very simple. Okay. But there's other ways that a case can become complex. Okay. When a case gets like a lot of media exposure, okay, or if let's say the defendant has very special personality or mental issues, okay, the case becomes very complex, okay? I think we saw this also with the Lori Vallow case, although her case was already death qualified, but let's just imagine. Let's imagine if Lori Vallow had killed a bunch of people in her family, but at the level of second-degree murder, okay? Because she has such a complex personality and she's involved in this very complex system of, you know, kind of like a cult, basically, or a religious, there's like religious issues infecting the actual commission of the crime. I would categorize that as complex, even if she was not facing the death penalty. Okay, the same with Sarah Boone. Most people who face second-degree murder, really, it's not a complex case. But in a situation like Sarah Boone, because of her personality, because of the media exposure, I would classify this as I would say, a high complexity case. And in fact, I would actually call this I would almost call it like an ultra high, well, not ultra high, but very, very high complexity case, because at sentencing, the sentencing is where we're going to see, I think, the real skill of the attorney that she needs. And I am confident. Okay, I'm sorry. You guys can criticize me. I get a lot of criticism on this channel, but I've been around a long time and I can smell a lawyer and I can watch them in action and I can feel them in just like 2 or 3 seconds. I can kind of feel how good they are. I'm sorry if you're offended by that, but I do have some experience. And I looked at all the lawyers that Sarah Boone had from the roster, either from the PD or from the appointed counsel roster that they had, and every single one of those attorneys that showed up, for her appointed counsel, okay, all those attorneys that she ended up firing. Although I did not see that one private counsel that she got in the beginning, the one from Miami, but I'm not going to say anything about him. Okay. But all those appointed counsels that we saw, that everyone was saying, oh, they have so much experience, blah, blah, blah. They looked like weak, kind of anemic attorneys that did not seem up to the energetic level of the kind of complexity that this case represents. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you, I don't think Sarah so far has had very many good lawyers on her side. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. Okay, so now, okay, I'm just going to speak sort of freely. Okay, a lot of people criticize me. Okay, and they say, oh, I'm being really soft on her. I'm being soft on her. I don't want her to do a lot of time. I don't want her to be punished. Hell, how do you guys get that? Okay, I am confident that she's guilty. Okay, I personally think I could even figure out a way that in my mind, I think she's morally guilty of something very close to even first-degree murder. Okay, especially if somebody could prove that the suitcase went down the stairs. Okay, if somebody could prove that, I know there's going to be witnesses, but if they do a good job of proving that the suitcase went down the stairs, I don't know. And I think morally, I think at some point, even if you couldn't charge her in Florida, even if it's not practical, I would say morally, she's guilty of first-degree murder as a person who killed somebody in the course of a kidnapping and torture of a disabled person. I realize that maybe she doesn't fit the actual, case law criteria for those charges. But I think morally, she knew she had a disabled person in the suitcase and she just basically tortured him and left him to die. Okay, so I can see her guilty even higher than second degree, at least morally, right? And I think she totally deserves punishment. Okay, the problem I have, and this is the problem I had with the Lisa Montgomery, I'm showing photos of Lisa Montgomery in the background, okay? And you guys research that, okay? I've already done a video on her. That was the woman who carved a baby out of somebody's womb. She actually tricked somebody who was pregnant because she was in this delusion that she needed to have a baby and she thought she was going to have a baby. And I think she even had like a hysterical pregnancy or whatever. And I mean, let's be honest, okay? What she did was terrible. Okay, but please, my God, everybody, I know what she did was terrible, but who the hell thinks that Lisa Montgomery wasn't crazy out of her mind? Okay, who here really thinks this is a woman who had to be medicated with antipsychotics while she was on death row? Okay, she spent all of death row basically being treated as a psychiatric patient. Okay, and she was put on that list of 13 by Donald Trump to make all these executions in the last year of Donald Trump's presidency. Okay. And so I'm not trying to say that Lisa Montgomery isn't guilty of a terrible crime, but as a person who, like maybe I'm not a true crime person. Okay. And maybe that's the difference between me and a lot of people. I don't care about true crime. Sometimes I don't even know what true crime is. I'm a person who works in criminal defense. Okay. And all I want is for us to have a fair assessment of each person for what they did. Okay, a fair assessment so we can learn. So in the future, we don't have these problems. We need to learn from all these cases. Okay, um, and so in some cases, a person is way criminogenic. The word is criminogenic. They're just basically criminals, and they have maybe like 10% mental illness. Okay, some people they're like 50% criminogenic and they're like 50% mentally ill. But some people, there is always an element of of criminal mind. Okay, there is always some element of criminality, but some people are like say 80% mentally ill. You see what I mean? And so you're looking at kind of the balance. And I'm not saying that if you have like say like more than half of your mental state is let's say mental illness, I'm not saying that makes you innocent. I'm not one of those people. I'm not saying it makes you innocent, but it helps us understand the overall true culpability. And also for the future, because in the present, we don't have a system to deal with this. So in the future, we can develop a system that tailors the punishment according to the level of mental illness versus criminality. Okay, because there's always kind of a little balance in there. Okay, so I'm not saying these people shouldn't be separated from society. I'm not saying they shouldn't be condemned for their wrongdoing, but we do, as fair-minded citizens, we do have to measure the balance between, the mental illness component or the neurological deficiency of a person versus their actual raw criminality. Okay, and why do I say this? Okay, look, what is one of the main cases that I work on as let's say, I work in criminal defense as a consultant and an analyst, all right? What is the main cases that I work on? Okay, one of the main cases that I work on, because I work in the federal system, okay, I work on these cases where they send these fast boats in the Pacific Ocean and in the Caribbean Sea. They come from Colombia and Ecuador. And these fast boats will carry like 600 kilos of cocaine, or like even like 1,000 kilos of cocaine, like these multi-hundred kilos of cocaine. They even have little submarines that they send, okay? And they will send hundreds of these boats, knowing that a percentage will get interdicted by the Coast Guard, right? But basically, this is how like hundreds and hundreds of kilos of cocaine gets transported into the United States, all right? And the people that I defend are these poor, basically. These basically illiterate people from South America that are just poor people. They don't even know what they're doing. They don't even do drugs. These are just poor people in sandals that are crewing the boat. Okay, but think about the people who are really responsible. Okay, think about like say the let's say the high level cartel people that are sending these people, right? Okay, when I look at somebody like Lori Vallow or Chad Daybell, or when I look at somebody like Sarah Boone, these are just neighborhood crackpots. Okay, these are neighborhood crackpots. They're going to get a body count. They'll get one or two dead people around them, and that sucks, right? Or like say someone like Corey Richens. This is a neighborhood crackpot, right? But there are other people in this world that are very comfortably, and they're not any at all mentally ill. These are people that are perfectly sane, that are running a multi-million-dollar business, and they're living in a mansion in South America, and they are calmly and professionally organizing, let's say, a cartel business that will kill every day, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 people a day. Okay, so their body count is a mountain of dead people compared to these little neighborhood crackpots with their little petty little mental illnesses. So it's hard for me to look at a person, even like Lori Vallow. I can see the evil of what she did, of course, but what I see in her, fair-mindedly, I see a sick person is what I see. Okay, now granted, yes, of course, I wouldn't get within 10 feet of Lori Vallow. She scares the hell out of me. She needs to be separated from society. But I can't feel that she's this horrible monster. I mean, she is a monster. She is a monster, but she's kind of a lightweight monster compared to the mega monsters, at least the ones that I deal with. And I'm sorry, I'm just telling you. And I think we can all imagine things like this. Somebody who is at the top level of a cartel. Okay, these are people that are generating mountains of dead people. Mountains. They have a huge body count. Okay, and what happens usually when a high level cartel guy goes into the federal system? Like say a Chapo Guzman. Chapo Guzman has a body count that we can't even imagine, right? And when is he going to get the death penalty? You see, so it bothers me when we execute people like Lisa Montgomery, or now, granted, let's go to the Taylor Shabusiness. I also put that picture up there. Taylor Shabusiness, right? Okay. Now, granted, I do think Taylor Shabusiness probably should spend the rest of her life in custody, right? But I think it makes a big difference in terms of fairness whether we treat her as a psych patient, more as a psych patient, or more as a criminal, okay? Because I think if you look at her history, and I was so irritated with the psychiatrist they got for Taylor, in the Taylor Shabusiness trial. All these psychiatrists are saying, "Oh, I don't think she's mentally ill." No, she has a history of going in and out of psych hospitals since she was like 12 or 13 years old, or something like that, like 14 or 15, but just over and over again, psych hospital, antipsychotic medication. She's just she has a thick medical file, of psychiatric treatment, and some fancy expert's going to walk in and say she doesn't have a diagnosis. Ridiculous, right? Absolutely ridiculous. So all I'm saying is that, when I see someone like Taylor Shabusiness, or when I see somebody like Sarah Boone, I see a neighborhood crackpot. Okay. I don't see the kind of Chapo Guzman type of people that are just piling up dead bodies all over the place. Those are like angels of death. Those are the monsters. And I guarantee you, every time some big cartel kingpin goes into the federal system, they will never get the death penalty. Never. I've never seen anything. The only people who get the death penalty are pathetic, crazy people that kill their children or do something stupid in the neighborhood, like a neighborhood crackpot. And those are the guys that end up with the death penalty because they don't have very good lawyers, whatever. Okay, so that's basically my rant. But like I said before, as far as Sarah Boone, okay, basically, if I can try to summarize how I feel about Sarah Boone, okay, I think she should plead guilty. I've said this for a long time. I'm pretty sure I'll make my prediction here. I think this new counsel, this guy, James Owens, he looks like he's been around. He looks like a pretty good lawyer from what I've seen. I think he's going to convince her to plead guilty because I think he's going to convince her that even if she thinks she's innocent, okay, he's going to convince her that even if she is innocent, okay, on the evidence that there does exist, okay, the jury is liable to really, to not only get her convicted, but also the judge will, if she takes it to trial, the judge might penalize her subconsciously for going to trial, okay? When somebody confesses and just, saves the state, the economic burden of putting on a trial, the judges do tend subconsciously to reward that a little bit, okay? So I think the judge is going to convince her that she'll do better at sentencing if they can do a plea deal, right? And then at sentencing, I think if they don't plead it down to voluntary manslaughter, which I think they should do, but if they don't plead it down to voluntary manslaughter and they have to accept a second-degree murder confession, basically a plea deal, right? Then the trick is sentencing, okay? Because I believe, and I think this is going to be the strategy of this new attorney. I think they're going to get extensive neurological testing of Sarah Boone. I think they're going to do neurological testing. And I think neurological testing is going to show that she has some kind of, I think, brain damage from being a real chronic alcoholic. I think so. We'll see. If not, I think she has severe, more than just a personality disorder. I think anybody who looks at her knows that she's not a sober person. Okay. It's more than just arrogance. Okay. There's lots of narcissistic, arrogant people out there. She is in another category, kind of delusional, like exceptionally delusional, that to me says there's an added component of some kind of neurological something going on. And I think it may be related to her alcoholism. So if I were an attorney, I would put that on the table. And those are things that can get a normal second-degree murder sentence brought down considerably. Okay, so that's my prediction. And as far as like the rest of what I do with this channel, I do reserve the right sometimes to talk about politics because you want to talk about crime. Okay, you want to talk about crime. Okay, and by the way, guys, everybody thinks that I support Donald Trump. Let me be clear. Donald Trump has a lot of issues. And I just told you one issue I had with him, the way he lined up all those people to get executed, just to check off the box, like just to say that he killed a lot of people and, broke another record or whatever. So he's a president who's not afraid to execute people. He doesn't even care if those people are executed personally. I think he was doing it to basically appease his political base, So I don't have a lot of respect for Donald Trump, but let me tell you something, guys. I think that we are in a massive state of denial as to how bad the Biden presidency has been, mostly with regard to what's going on in Ukraine and Israel, okay, and potentially with China, and let's say maybe with Taiwan and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that if Kamala Harris gets elected now, in one of the most critical moments in history, we're this far away from sealing a permanent enemy, like a long-term enemy status with Russia, like basically reviving like a Cold War dynamic that could be very dangerous and very detrimental. We're really heightening the tensions of conflict around the world, sort of in terms of global politics. Okay. And I personally think that Kamala Harris, let's just be honest. Okay. I've been to law school. I've been around a lot of black law students. I've seen black law students that were way smarter than I was. Okay. So I don't even look at color. Okay. So it's nothing to do with her color. I think Kamala is full of herself, thinking of herself as a black person. Okay. I think she's the racist person, because the real problem with Kamala Harris is that she couldn't even pass her bar exam. And just listening to her talk, she's not a very smart person. Okay. It's just plain as day. Okay. And believe me, like I'm not that smart, and I had no trouble passing a bar exam. And I passed bar exams in several states. Okay. And also she went to Hastings, in California. For a person of color, if she had even reasonable LSAT scores, she should have been even getting into, like, say, maybe even like almost like Harvard or Stanford or whatever. And so really, my big question with Kamala, I'm concerned about her just intelligence. Okay. And I'm sorry, even George Bush apparently got over 1,300 in the SAT. I mean, I'm sorry, that more or less correlates to like an IQ of about 130. So even George Bush, who we think of as kind of a dopey, kind of a dumb guy, he's actually not that dumb. But Kamala Harris really, I think, is notably really below par, way below par for a U.S. president. And I'm sorry, Richard Nixon, he went to Duke University. He was like near the top of his class in law school. Jimmy Carter was like a really smart, like nuclear engineer. I mean, Bill Clinton had an IQ of like 170 or 160. I mean, Barack Obama went to Harvard Law School and was on the law review. I mean, so Kamala Harris really is, I think a dangerous proposition. And so, I may do other videos about that, but I just encourage people, look, obviously Donald Trump has his own issues, but at least we can agree in this country that what we're dealing with right now is a crisis. We have a crisis because whoever becomes president, this world is in a crisis. Not to mention, I think people are way underestimating the economic vulnerabilities within the United States. I think there's a lot of artificial kind of stability built into the economy, but that doesn't mean it isn't straining. And I also think the border issues are important, and I think both sides are very dishonest about the realities around that. Anyway, so my prediction with Sarah Boone, I pretty much laid it out. I think they're going to plea bargain her. I hope so. But regardless, when she gets to sentencing, I think they're going to use her neurological status as a way to get her sentence down. And my prediction in the end is that Sarah Boone will just do time served. Although, morally speaking, I think she needs to have more confinement because I think she has serious mental issues. And I think that morally, even if she does get off, I think she should be on a very, very strict probation where she has to really not touch alcohol and really work on her, neurological issues. That's my prediction. Anyway, sorry guys, I've been so busy. I'll try to make more videos, but I've just been through a really, really busy time, and it's probably going to be another couple weeks before I'm really down to a level where I can actually do more videos. But believe me, I would like to make more videos, and I appreciate anybody watching, and thanks for your patience. Okay, thanks for watching.